Welcome to the Politics of Everything. I'm Amber Daines, your host and podcast producer. This is a half hour of power, a podcast dropping every week where I unpack the politics of everything, from money to motherhood, nutrition to narcissism, startups to secularism, the environment, quality, and much, much more. Our guests are seasoned in the field or topic of their choice, even if you've not heard of them yet. This is a non-partisan show. So while I love exploring varied views and get a buzz from a healthy debate of ideas, this is not a purely blue, white, green program. Please subscribe, tune in and enjoy the politics of everything. Bev Andrews is a change management expert, and for a number of years now, I've worked with and witnessed the rise of change management functions in a range of organisations, from utilities to banks and all kinds of businesses. Usually my role is in the communications space, and that can take patience, lots of time and nuance to get those approaches going in sync with my change management counterpart. Change management draws on theories from many disciplines, including psychology, behavioural science, engineering, and systems thinking. And there are many different types of models to choose from. One central idea of all change management theories is that no change ever happens in isolation. In one way or another, change impacts the whole organisation and all the people in it. But with good change management, you can encourage everyone to adapt and embrace your new way of thinking. Sounds easy enough, right? Well, my guest, Bev, has devoted the past 20 years of her career to delivering business solutions across a broad range of services in diverse sets of industries. Bev has extensive experience in organisational management, managing, developing and facilitating change in order to achieve organisational improvement and transformation. And during her career, Bev has worked within organisations of different shapes and sizes, including those that she can talk about a little bit more in our podcast. Bringing this experience to her business now, Aspire Change Management, Bev continues to provide the highest level of practical and empowering change management support, training and advice to Australian businesses. Unlike other consultancies, Aspire specialises only in change management, and they provide end-to-end change management, which includes the strategy, the planning, delivery and capability development. Working strategically and tactically, Aspire leverages processes and tools, engages employees on this journey. So to find out a bit more about what Bev does and how she approaches change management, I want to welcome her to the podcast.
Thank you. It's lovely to be here.
Podcasting remotely can be challenging, but it doesn't have to be. Since 2017, I have relied on Zencastr's all-in-one web-based solution to make the process quick and painless, the way podcasting should be. If you know me, I'm pretty obsessed with quality guests, quality content and quality sound, and that's what Zencastr allows me to do. Not to mention, it's really easy to use, even for my guests that aren't particularly tech savvy. There's nothing to download, they just click on the link and we start recording. Zencastr is all about making your podcasting experience easy, and with everything from local recording to automatic post-production all in the one tool, you don't have to leave your browser to get each episode done. I want you to have the same great experience that I do for all my podcasts and content needs. So I have a special offer for you. If you go to zen.ai/politics of everything and enter this promo code, you'll get 30% off in your first 3 months when you sign up to Zencastr Pro. That's zen.ai, politics of everything. It's now time to share your story. So just to go back into your childhood career ambitions, I don't suppose change management was in that wish list, along with astronaut, ballerina and anything else you might have thought you might have been. Do you remember what you wanted to do as a kid growing up, and how did you kind of get to where you are now?
Well, what I remember as a child growing up was I really loved maths, and my dad loves maths. So maths was my thing. And in the mid-70s, when I was first in high school, I can remember this computer science type of topic being thrown around because, all about computers and things. And of course, we didn't have computers then. We'd barely got colour TV, a man on the moon. So I thought I would go into computers. As it turned out, we emigrated to Australia, and my love of maths and my dad's encouragement, I went into banking because back then it was considered to be quite very professional. You were all referred to as Mr. Mr. because married ladies weren't allowed to stay in the workforce, so you were Mr. or Miss. And it's just progressed from there, I think, from understanding businesses. Change didn't exist as a profession then, but obviously everything was changing.
Yeah, absolutely. That's so interesting, isn't it? So I can see that sort of trajectory, I guess, into what you do now. And there's obviously a lot of data and analytics that goes into change management. What do you define change management is, and how does it kind of operate in a practical level in an organisation?
Oh, that's a question over a bottle of wine, I think, not a glass of wine there, Amber. So what it is, the formal term for it really is that you're making, you're changing from something that's occurring today in today's state into something that's new. So whether it be through an expected behaviour, whether it's doing something completely different or in a different way, you're just sort of going from A to B. And the journey could literally just be one small step, or it could be, a journey of A to Z, and you just start with A and you're moving through what that could be, which is quite often what you hear when you hear about, organizations are doing a huge transformation. They're talking about something that is going to have multiple facets to it. But it could be something as simple, or not as simple, as just deploying a small project, or, changing the whole way we work through an office refurbishment. So it's lots of different things, and it means lots of different things to different organizations as well.
Yeah, I can see the challenge, I guess, for any organisation, no matter how big it is, to really embrace change management. I mean, when you're talking about sort of transformation, is it things such as, I don't know, everything from, rebranding or merging with another company, or even just downsizing and shifting the way they operate? I mean, what would be some of the more, I guess, tactical ways which change management plays out?
I think we often bandy words around a lot because they sound really, important and big. So
Especially in corporate, right? There's a lot
oh,
of
corporate speak is terrible. So you hear the word transformation. Now, transformation for me is when I worked in one organisation, which was one of the banks, well, actually two of the different banks, to be honest. And one was actually around an acquisition and creating a whole new culture for the organisation over here in Western Australia. And that was the actual merger itself took a couple of years and the rebranding and bringing the teams together, keeping the business functional at the same time, or the two businesses, until they actually were operating as one. And then working through all the elements from, getting all of your processing through correctly, training everybody, being able to communicate out to your customers. That was a huge transformation, and that took a significant amount of time, significant amount of resources, and lots of high energy. The other example with the bank was actually wanting to expand outside of Western Australia. And once again, that was quite transformational because they looked at a completely different way of operating over on the East Coast, simplifying a lot of their products and processes because they didn't want to replicate a lot of the old style traditional banking we had back in those days, which was very much writing checks and coming into a branch and doing all your transactions actually in a branch, but starting to move into that more digital world. Now they were really transformational. They rebranded, they took all the employees and tried to bring them along on that journey, making it exciting, making them part of it and being involved. They were really transformational changes. They weren't based just on replacing technology. And often we see out there we're doing a digital transformation, which at the crux is ripping out a core old mainframe or technology and replacing it with some more adaptive and agile technologies that we have for today's market.
And when you say these things can take time, I mean, I imagine they can take years, not just months.
Exactly. When you're doing that type of transformational change, where it's across the whole of the organisation, you're looking at everything. That's not just around that particular piece of change. You need to make sure you've got the right leadership in play. You need to build a variety of capabilities for your colleagues. You're bringing different teams together, so you've got that whole norming and storming of teamwork that goes on as people come together, people's beliefs and their own personal psychological contracts that they've actually brought in with them. What their expectations are of the organisation, how we communicate, and we still got to keep the work going and keep the customers going as well. Meet regulatory commitments, all of those types of things still have to happen while you're going through these types of transformations.
So, what's the basis to your framework for change management? Can you give us an idea of how you operate?
So my basis is I like to try to keep things as simple as possible for whoever I'm working with. So I'm not one of these that will go out there and try to dazzle with, I'm using this type of methodology, or we're only going to use this element here, or I'm going to, cherry prick from everything in my toolkit. My approach is very much around what's the organization, where's its history right now, what's it trying to achieve, what capacity does it have right now? Because organizations, as I keep harping on, are in business, and they're usually doing this as well as lots of other changes going on at the same time. So what can they actually absorb to be successful? And what's the most pragmatic way of making that happen? So there's lots of frameworks out there around doing your engagement and experiments and being very agile and adaptive, and it's all in and it's all collaborative. And it's really wonderful to do that because it creates a high sense of energy and everybody leaning in. But at the same time, it is distracting from their day-to-day work as well. So, and quite often organisations don't supply extra resources, so you're taking your specialists out of their day-to-day job to actually help craft this new future. So my framework is very much around assessing what we've got in front of us right now. What can we leverage? What can we knit together with other things that are going on, so we're not duplicating effort, or we're not trying to call on the same stakeholders for multiple pieces of work? And then based on the capabilities across the organisation, what are some of those strategies that we can leverage from? Put some simple plans together. There's lots of arguments around, well, you shouldn't plan for anything because that, doesn't allow you to pick up any of the low-hanging fruit, versus you can't plan for everything either, but you still need to have a plan.
Absolutely.
And then build people around you to actually be the ones that are building and implementing that change, because they're the ones who are going to be sustaining that change once you've actually left the building, so to speak. So it's very much around building a framework of engaging what you've got, working at the pace of the organisation and with their capability and their capacity, and enabling those that are going to be there to carry it forward to feel equipped to do so once the change has actually landed.
Wow, that's a great explanation. I think that's the best way I've heard that explained in a really, non-jargonistic way, which I think is a challenge for lots of people who might not be familiar with what change management actually means. They might have even worked in an organisation where they've gone through some sort of transformation and not felt very much part of that, if that makes sense, because it's just been at the top level. It's just been something that's been left to the management team or the ELT.
And unfortunately, most organisations operate that way. We still have forms of hierarchy, and that's a very traditional way of working, and that comes from, the early industrial changes and with IT. And it's a very sort of power and control approach to our leadership. And we are adapting, our organisations are adapting, and it's slow. People are adapting more, a lot quicker. And you've only got to look at the last 2 years of how adaptive people can be when we face a crisis. And the challenge we now face from a change perspective is trying to balance that. How do we actually enable people to contribute and feel that they're collaborating without the organisation feeling that it's going to go into chaos or lose that control, and be a lot more responsive, because we do need to be. So, yes, we can make it sound very complex and hard, and that's why it keeps us all in business. But if we bear it back down to the basics, people understand, and then, that builds that awareness and desire, which is what you're looking for, because they need to be part of the change, not have change done to them.
Absolutely. So how does a business know if it's getting its change management right? You mentioned the fact that some organisations don't like the idea of planning because they think it's all sort of in free fall, but I imagine that you have checks and balances along the way that let you know, rather than getting to the end of a timeline and then retrospectively deciding.
That's very true. And that's one of the things that the agile way of working has really sort of helped influence, that going back and checking in a regular basis. So in a more traditional way, you would be putting your projects out there and your changes out there, and you're sort of going in a more linear way. We do this step, and when we hit a certain point, then we do the next thing and the next thing. And that's how you would see a lot of your communications and your engagements occurring. With Agile, it's broken down into smaller pieces that can be delivered slightly earlier. And that enables you then to check as you're actually going, hitting the mark? Are people actually able to adopt this? Are they ready for it? So being able to build in, even if your project is, something that can only be delivered in one big hit and it's going to take 12 months or 18 months, you can still check in with people, asking people if you've put out generic communication on your company's intranet site, for example, start having a look at, well, how many people have actually even looked at that? How can you weave that conversation into regular team meetings? What sort of things can you do so that you can actually check if people are even reading and are aware of what's going on first before you try to do anything else with them? So that whole getting feedback and being visible and just asking questions is a simple way that you can actually first ask how it's going, and then if you are getting it right. And right means different things for different people. So right might mean for the business leader that there's no problems and it's going to plan, and I only see you if there's a problem. So therefore, if I don't see you, I'm just going to assume it's okay. That might be right. Right might be for the project manager that it's on schedule and to budget. Right for an individual is very much, I don't need to worry about this until actually it's in front of me because I've got all these other changes coming to me. So as a change professional, you actually need to understand what that is as part of that early engagement and that early assessment when you're looking at the history of the organisation and how the organisation operates to determine what does right mean. And unfortunately, you see some very poor results because change managers, we're usually very professional, very passionate people. We've got lots of energy and we're very enthusiastic and all of that. And we can come in very early like a bull at a gate.
Yes.
And oversell almost, and then can't deliver because of delays and things like that. So you do really have to sort of find the cadence of the organisation, work with the organisation on what's right for them.
Absolutely. I do want to talk about some statistics now. Obviously, everyone might have different experiences anecdotally, but a Harvard Business Review a number of years ago found that around 80% of the projects with effective change management came in or under budget. So that sounds like that's a bit of a win for the bottom line. However, when change management wasn't as effective, there was clearly negative fiscal impacts. And the same Harvard Business Review suggests that up to 70% of all change initiatives undertaken in organisations fail. So that seems to me a bit of a shock. If it's all going well and, like you say, people think they're doing it right and there's no feedback loop saying it otherwise, there's obviously some errors which are being made quite, commonly. So there's some things which you see that people do, either early on or in the process that can actually upend how the change management function can bring its best self to any entity, whether it's, a big company or a small company.
Definitely. And I think there's a couple of things in here. So one of them is actually making sure you've got the right resource coming in to support you with your change. If you're using internal resources, make sure you've actually developed their capability so that they have a broader understanding of what change management is. Because change management is not just comms and training, and it's not about going on a 3-day course and calling yourself a change manager. So the first thing is to make sure you've got the right resources coming in and that you understand what they're going to deliver and they understand what you expect of them. So that's my very first thing, and I could spend a whole podcast talking to you about that. The second one, though, which I think is absolutely key, change initiatives, when they talk about them failing, what we're saying there is that we're not actually getting the business to adopt the change as proficiently as we expected. And this is because when we're thinking about, well, what does the end look like, it's too easy to go, I'm not sure. When I come in and when I talk to people about change, one of the first things I say to them is try to understand what your future is looking like. What is the vision? So this first step, when it's deployed and when it's actually functioning in the organization, what does good look like? And that's the point of what you're trying to achieve when you start your planning for your change, when you start looking at your assessment and your gaps. And you need to start that at the very beginning. I refer to it as having the business ready.
Yes,
So the change for the
sense.
business readiness doesn't start when you're ready to go and implement, which is unfortunately what does happen with projects, because that's when they go, oh, I need someone to come in and do some comms. The readiness is all around things of understanding the end-to-end journey of the processes that you change or the system upgrade that you're doing, or even if you're changing the way that we work, what does that look like when it's operating really well? And then where are we today? And then you can build that gap. But you do it from the beginning, and you keep checking in, and you get your business owners to be responsible for those things. As a change person, I'm not responsible for the policy or the procedure.
Yes, that's right. You can't be doing everything, right?
I'm not responsible for that.
You have
No.
a certain function in the business.
That's right. Business owners are accountable for those things. So identify up front. If that's changing, get them engaged early, get them on the journey so they understand what's changing and what needs to occur to be ready before they go on live. So we can actually educate people and we can close that gap. Because what happens when we go live, people have to do things differently and we're slower. We have to think harder. And it takes time and it's a bit painful for us. And that's why things don't land, because our business still has to run at its optimum when we go live. And yet we've introduced something new for people. That's why we get these statistics about things failing. It's because we haven't adopted it to the level that we expected.
Absolutely. So changing tack a little bit, I'm always a big believer people haven't got to where they are in their business or career without some sort of mentorship, and that could be informal or formal. Have there been one or two mentors that really stand out for you, and why have they made such an impact in your life and career?
There's been a few really great mentors, actually. And in fact, I think every time I've gone and worked in a different organisation or had a different leader, I found someone that I can actually look at and go, I like what they might do there. It might not be everything, but there's something that I can learn from everyone. And I did a post recently on LinkedIn and I named a couple of leaders or mentors that probably didn't expect me to recognise them. And that's because they did have an impact in a way that they probably didn't expect. So one of my mentors was a really hard taskmaster. He was a real pace-setting leader, really pushed the boundaries on how you thought and your delivery. And it was and I've told him this lately, quite an intimidating environment to operate in, because every time his name come up on my phone, my little tummy would churn and my heart would beat a little bit faster, because I knew he was going to be challenging me and asking me questions that I potentially don't know the answer of. And I have to go away and think and research and get help and challenge. But that really took me out of my comfort zone. Doing this podcast makes me feel uncomfortable and out of my comfort zone. And that's what mentors can do for you, is they see the potential in you and they stretch you. So he was one of those, and I'm ever grateful for that. The other mentor that really opened my eyes was, he was happy to spend the time when we were talking. It was my time. And so it wasn't about today. What are the problems you're facing today? It was, what are the things that you want to know about? You know, what's happening across the organisation or outside of the organisation that interests you? And how can I actually help you explore that? And that really sort of helped me realise that when you're working on something, you can't work on it in isolation. There is too many other things going on around you that can impact you. So having a mentor that actually helps you look across the horizon, not just down to your feet, is also really, really important as well. So they were two that very much came to mind when I think of my greatest mentors.
They sound fantastic. So if we spoke again in a year's time, what would be the number one thing you have hoped to have changed or evolved in your business, and why?
Oh, this is an interesting question. I've been going through a bit of personal development and planning in the last 4 to 6 weeks, and I can honestly say my thinking is pivoting a lot. My biggest passion is actually helping others to be effective in the change profession, and you don't have to be a change manager to do that. And that is looking and supporting others individually, which is one person at a time. And given that there's billions of people out there, I'm not going to achieve that in a year. So the other passion I have is actually helping organisations understand what is change, what's organisational change, what's enterprise change. And by being a little bit more effective and strategic in this space, the benefits are absolutely huge across the organisation. So in 12 months' time, I'd like there to be more organisational conversation around having enterprise change, having change at the strategic table, having leaders embrace the fact that change leadership is something that they need to be focusing on every day and harnessing that strength.
Absolutely. So a final takeaway message for us today on the politics of change management, what would you share?
I would say that change is different to every single person. So whether you come from a background of change and you're a specialist and you've done change in a very traditional project way, whether you've moved into agile, whether you've moved into lean, whether you're moving across all of those elements, don't forget the foundations of our profession, absolutely essential for us to be able to develop and nurture others. And I would say to anybody that's wanting to become a change professional or just understand change a little bit more, because it is going to be a core capability for us as we move into our future work, is understand the theories of change and where change management's grassroots come from, because that will enable you then to adapt and understand anything that comes into our arena a little bit better. And it will enable you to anchor what you're trying to do now to achieve a better outcome for the future.
Thank you so much, Bev. You've had obviously a very long career in this business and your expertise really shines through. And if you do want to connect further with Bev Andrews, of course, there'll be some details on the show notes. Until next time, take care. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks so much for listening today. If you've enjoyed the politics of everything, I thrive on your feedback. So please add a short review and share the podcast with your network through Apple, Spotify, and all the usual suspects. I'm always on the hunt for new and diverse guests, so if you or someone you know has a fresh idea you're busting to get out there, please email me at amber@amberdanes.com and my crew will get back to you very soon.